Oh, what a nice surprise. id Software just dropped a pretty amazing new update for Doom and Doom 2 with modern map support, easy online play, a new campaign and a lot of quality of life updates. They also added an id Vault, where work in progress art during Doom's development can be found, and it's pretty massive. A pretty large chunk of it was already shared by John Romero some years ago, like the full rotation sprites of the player, zombies and imp. But id Software was like, "Stop that right now, Mr. Romero." Turns out id had the idea to showcase the cut content by themselves. id Vault unearths even more cut content, so watch until the end to see the new, exciting, unused monster sprites. Totally not saying this to boost the audience retention, by the way. Let's start off with one of classic Doom's most defining features, the status bar face. During Doom's development, Doom Guy's head looked a bit different, and he had darker hair. 4 other designs also appear on the sprite sheet. You've got a Doom Guy with longer hair, one that resembles the final design, some kind of nerd, and hell yeah. Doom was meant to have different characters for stuff like co-op, so these were possibly early designs that eventually got scrapped. The classic Doom Guy face we all know and love used to have 7 different levels of bloodiness, unlike the final game where there are only 5. There's also a sprite sheet of the mugshots, but without any blood. Some of them do look a little off, so they were either unfinished or scrapped for simply looking weird. Some of the mugshot animations had extra frames to appear more smooth. Doom Guy also had a very thick neck back then. The player sprite also sported a different helmet design at some point. Let's have a look at how id created Doom's title screen. They took a photo or scanned in Don Punchat's drawing, they removed the background, filled in the proper colors, superimposed a shotgun, and then make Doom Guy less pink. The title screen background also went through some changes. Here's one with a sunburned Doom Guy, then with demons in the background. Or wait, let's make the demons blend in with the background. Or how about no background at all? How about this id logo? Or you know what? Let's just make it say Doom. No Doom Guy, no hellish background, no demons, just straight up Doom. And that we've created it. Yeah, no. Thankfully, this one went unused. The Ultimate Doom's prefix title work in progress. At some point they considered the definitive Doom, but went for Ultimate instead. Let's have a look at all those cool Doom 1 intermission screens, shall we? The id Vault shows different iterations of episode 1's intermission. Here's the backdrop sketch turned into the final version. Then at some point it had some kind of transit system, which got cut. Episode 2's intermission screen had the exact same color as episode 1 at some point. It was changed to grey to differentiate it from episode 1. Episode 3's intermission has always been my favorite, and now you can see how it evolved. It was pretty barren from the start. Interestingly, there's a portion of episode 1's backdrop here. Then slowly but surely the landscape was formed and hellish buildings were added. Also, apparently the red here is a sea of blood. I always thought it was part of the sky. Interesting. There's also the episode 2 and 3 finale screens. Here you can see the finale of episode 2 evolving from a scanned-in pencil sketch to the final version. Also of the infamous episode 3 ending screen with poor Daisy. There's also a version without any bunnies whatsoever. Remember the order screen from Doom 1? It went through some different versions as well. Here's a strange unfinished one showing off some monsters and telling you to go to heck. Another one with the order information, an obscured cyberdemon, and Doom Guy being impressed by the big trouble in front of him. The third version resembles the final version with the sneak peek images, although it's missing the one with the cyberdemon. It also has a cheeky message, telling you that you still haven't blasted a cacodemon with a plasma rifle. Let's move on to the skies. There's a collection of completed but unused sky textures. Some of them are earlier versions of existing skies. Here's the process of creating the hellish sky from episode 3. You've got the stock photograph, change the colors, make it hellish, add some more rocks, and there you go. The evolution of Doom 2 city sky from start to finish. And Doom 2's hell sky. Interestingly, they ended up using the second to last iteration instead of the final one shown here. We've also got some skies here that are simply rough photographs or scans. Some of these ended up being used after some heavy editing, but there's also some unfinished ones. Alright, let's have a look at the weapons now. The pistol had some extra frames, including one for recoil, and what seems to be an unfinished frame of reloading the gun. The pistol also went through quite some designs. There's a shotgun graphic without the hands. Speaking of hands, there's also an unused hand graphic to support the shotgun, but ended up being used as a basis for this shotgun sprite. Here's a really cool one. The super shotgun was always quite cropped. Now extended sprites exist for all of its frames. You can actually see the break action here. The weird theory that Doomguy inserts the shells into the muzzle is now debunked. The chaingun sprite has an extended version where you can see the base of the weapon. Its muzzle flash went through many different iterations too. Some early chainsaw sprites show blurry blades, which they touched up later. The blade also had some blood at some point, or is it just me? It also had 4 different frames for its idle animation, instead of the final version, which ended up having only 2. The rocket launch was planned to have some kind of reload animation, where Doomguy loads in a rocket from the front. You can see a much rougher rocket launcher graphic here, implying that the rocket launcher graphics were not drawn by hand after all. I wonder what the original trick was. The muzzle flash was also different. Rockets were also likely to leave behind smoke trails, but ended up being cut. Not sure what the spiked ball was all about though. Extended plasma rifle sprites are now available, showing off it had some cool red lights turning on and off during its firing animation. The final version cropped it out. The plasma bolts also used to look way different, more zappy in a way. Okay, let's check out the items. Health bonuses had many different designs, more demonic looking. The color scheme here even resembles a Kakudemon, no? In the end, we ended up with the more simple blue potions. The partial invisibility went through some iterations too. So did the invulnerability sphere. The radiation suit went through some different designs, showing corrosion and nukage. There's a clean one and one with a helmet as well. In the end, we got one where the corrosion is a bit more subtle. By the way, I may as well mention it now, but these graphics are based on photos of G.I. Joe action figures. The rumor that they are edits of the Mussolini photograph is nonsense. In hindsight, I should have never brought that up in the other video. Alright, now for my favorite section of the It Vault, the monsters. First, the 3 unused monsters. There's a weird red cloud with a face on it. The face kind of resembles the wall faces you see often in hell levels. Nobody knows what it was supposed to do, but the graphics were reused for the Banshee enemy found in the new Legacy of Rust expansion. We already mentioned this blood creature in a previous video, but a second sprite sheet unearthed with some green sprites on it. Some kind of death animation maybe? The third unused enemy is a demon with wings. Kind of resembles an imp. This is the only frame id Software made, so it was cut from the game quite early on. Now let's talk about the existing enemies. The zombies had a different jib animation, where the bits were spread out a lot more. I'm pretty sure these are the same sprites seen in the old Visit to id Software video, where they showed off an early build of Doom. They were definitely used in Doom 3 Super Turbo Turkey Puncher 3. Interesting how they dug up unused graphics for that. The shotgunner at some point was supposed to pump the shotgun. Only 2 frames were made, and the idea was ultimately scrapped. Moving on to the chain gunner, an early version was not as buff as the current one. Also, he had a lighter skin color. Gasp! His backpack went through some different designs, with the blandest one ending up as the final version. Finally, after 30 years, the Imp has a full rotation of paint frames. All this time the Imp used mirrored versions of the other paint frames, making it look a bit odd, since its extended arm would swap sides. An alternative jibbing animation for the Imp also exists, and it looks quite ridiculous. Almost MS Painty. The Imp apparently has or had green insides. Pretty sure these are recycled Baron of Hell guts. Death frames of the Pinky exist without any blood. The final frame ended up being cut. The It Vault is right. He does look sleepy. Here's some different designs the Lost Soul went through. Look at those evil grins. Some of these are pretty metal. A skinned head with spikes? Damn son. Not sure what the bloody ouch face is doing here. Maybe it was used as a base for the skinned Lost Soul design. We all know that the Hell Knight is a simple Baron of Hell recolor. Although id Software did experiment with a dozen or so different recolors until they decided to go with a 10 one. Raw photo captures of the Baron of Hell's walking and attacking frames can be found here too. There's also a sprite sheet with many different Baron pieces. Some still work in progress and others completely unused. We also got raw photo captures of the Revenant with a slightly different death animation. Also, this capture is eerie as heck. Some early touched-up Revenant sprites also resurfaced. These have different designs for the head. Some of the sprites still look a bit rough. This one even looks a bit like a Terminator. Sadly, none of the missing Revenant sprites can be found here. Some of the current Revenant sprites are mirrored when they shouldn't be, because of asymmetry. Will they ever appear? Who knows? The Mancubus has a huge collection of early sprites. Most of these are pretty rough looking, but there are some sprites that are edited to resemble the Mancubus we all know and love. It did go through some different designs too, like different tusks, but also blood dripping onto its chest. And a more worn out or sweaty appearance. The Mancubus, just like the Imp, had some missing paint frames. It mirrored 3 of them. This also looks a bit weird, because the pose is not symmetrical. Well, they're finally here, and it's amazing. It also had an alternative death animation similar to the Cyberdemon where it explodes. It's clearly unfinished, but I'm glad they went with the one where he has a splitting headache and falls apart. Another early death sprite exists, where the Mancubus falls backwards, but this too got cut very early on. All of the early Electrotron sprites resurfaced when it was still Mini Spider Mastermind. It had a different brain, eye color, and of course a chain gun instead of a plasma gun. The death animation is also a copy of the Spider Mastermind, and looks a bit weird downscaled like that. Alright, Archfall time. A lot of raw photo captures were added to the vault. Also some early sprites. One which we mentioned in a previous video, that it was visible on Doom 2's Steam page back then. The head looks more alien, and this was edited for the final version to use the demonic face with the tubes. The resurrection animation also used to have a green glow, instead of red like in the final version. John Romero shared one frame of the Spider Mastermind's magic attack. Now a full rotation exists of 2 frames of animation. There's also a full rotation set of the first 2 frames of her death animation. Kind of strange, since death animations always face the player. Maybe for the final boss they tried to make an exception. Either way, it looks a bit awkward. So that's it for all the new stuff shared by id Software. It's pretty amazing, and personally, my favorite addition of the new Doom plus Doom 2 port. There's a lot more to see, like unused weapons from alpha builds, more raw photos of the Cyberdemon sprites, old status bar graphics, and more. I decided to share the art I found most interesting. By the way, in the previous video, we went through some gargoyle textures and their real life locations. The book says it can be found in Milwaukee, but the street doesn't seem to exist anymore. Well, the actual street name is E. Windsor Place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And the goblin-like gargoyle, or rather grotesque, if you want to use the correct terminology, can be found above the door of a vegan restaurant called Strangetown. Last time we couldn't find the origins of the line grotesque, but I received an email pretty recently from a person named Zach that he found the lion head by complete accident while visiting the Graceland Cemetery in Chicago, Illinois. Credits go to Vonehead for the photos. If you ever feel like taking a road trip to the Holy Trinity of Doom, you can visit the goblin, lion, and bearded grotesque in a single day. Probably cool if you're a diehard Doom fan with nothing else to do. Thanks for watching. Thank you very much to id Software, Night Dive Studios and Machine Games for this cool port, and especially for the id Vault. More thanks goes to the YouTube members and the patrons, and huge shoutouts to the following folks: Agonizing Oral Pain, Henri Dieklin aka Mackhauser, Anthony Sicko, Art Cox, Beaks Make Me Coom, Ben of Langley, Bitcore, Bofu, Thunderstorm, Christopher Lowell, Florida Man, Green Knights 9000, I Don't Funkin' Know, John Hopper, Katsuna Teku, Hideo Gorobets, Matthias Sippert, Max Payne 67, Old Man Hen, Omega Tyrant, Pete Petersen, QuakeGamer632, Raven King, Riley, Robert Wakely, Space Duck, Spectre, Steak Jacobs, Stephen Bone, Tek Okami, Dead Epic Fox, Thomas, Timothy Collar, Turbine2k5, Victor Rick, and Who's Ace. I'll see you soon in another analysis video. See ya!